The NFL playoffs continue, and the divisional round is upon us. And the Buffalo Bills will defeat the Denver Broncos. I'm giving you my top 5 reasons today on the Ralph Rant. Let's go.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant, your source for hard-hitting Buffalo Bills takes. Now, here's your host of the Ralph Rant, that veteran watcher of generations of Bills teams, the prophet who predicted Josh Allen's greatness, that opinionated so-and-so you've walked out on parties because of, the Ralph.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant. I am your host, the Ralph. Thank you ever so much for being here. We're back today with another reasons video. This time, I have 5 of them explaining why the Buffalo Bills will defeat the Denver Broncos in the divisional round of the playoffs when the teams open up that divisional round this Saturday, January 17th, at Empower Field at Mile High Stadium. Now, before I get into it, thank you so much to everyone who's come out in support of the channel. My goodness, we've got a bunch of new subscribers from last week's video. A lot of likes, a lot of comments, and actually a lot of comments from Jaguars fans who thought I was extremely wrong. I appreciate your comments very much. I'm sorry so many of them were so incorrect. But nonetheless, we are back here this week, and now I've got 5 new reasons that the Bills will defeat the Broncos. And we're going to get into them right now, so let's blow the horn and go. All right, let's kick off the countdown with reason number 5. The Bills will beat the Broncos this Saturday, and I am calling that the rest versus rust trap. Now, Denver won the AFC number 1 seed, 14-3 regular season record. Congratulations to them. That, of course, means that all of their playoff games will be at home at Empower Field at Mile High. But that also means that they got the wild card weekend off, the first round bye in the playoffs. Now, that's a very, very valuable thing to have, of course, a bye in the first round. I mean, look what the Bills could have done with that, trying to get some players back. You've got injured guys and so forth. Players you just want to rest, perhaps. Guys that are getting over injuries, and just one more week would really help them. So that bye is really valuable. And it's valuable to the point where, of course, you see teams resting players in Week 18. The Bills did that themselves, where it was all 2s and 3s, and our depth outplaying and beating the Jets 35-8 at the last game at the Ralph. So that bye can really help. But the thing is that the Bills, like every other Week 18 team, played a game. And all of the other 6 Super Bowl contestants on the AFC side also played games this weekend. But the Denver Broncos did not. Now, they've got a very experienced coach, Sean Payton, who's turned that program around. So certainly you can't fault that at all. He knows what to do with the team during the bye. But the fact of the matter is you've got a second-year quarterback, Bo Nix, who is kind of streaky, and we'll get into that a little bit later as we go on in the show, but certainly demonstrates that maybe a week off isn't good for him or for the Broncos. Maybe that week off put a little bit of rust on the team. And this is especially true when you have younger quarterbacks who get into the flow of this, and you're doing game after game, repeating things, repeating routines, and then you have that week away from it. And then you're into playoffs, which is a completely different level of intensity than you were seeing in the regular season. So I believe that certainly that rust is going to have an effect and might overcome the benefits of rest for the Broncos, especially when it comes to quarterback Bo Nix and perhaps their offensive production. The Bills, on the other hand, even though they might be a little bit beat up, they are a well-oiled machine right now and have already gone out and won on the road. Let's continue. All right, let's move on to reason number 4 the Bills will beat the Broncos, and that is the 14-1 experience gap. Now, if you take a look at it very closely, you'll see that that really exists. Now, Sean Payton is a long and storied coach. He coached for years with the New Orleans Saints, and then, of course, via a trade, went to the Broncos in 23. He's completing his 3rd season. He's been a head coach for 17 playoff games. Sean McDermott has been a head coach for 14 playoff games, but actually a head coach for a lot fewer years than Peyton. And in terms of the regimes with the players they have, with Josh Allen, in Josh Allen's playoff career, he's currently throwing 26 touchdowns with only 4 interceptions. Bo Nix is thrown 1 touchdown, no interceptions, in the loss to the Bills last season. That's his only playoff experience. Of course, he has no rushing touchdowns, where Josh Allen has 7 in the playoffs. Now, that experience gap, I believe, is huge. Josh has been there. He's a warrior. He just came off the battlefield. Bo Nix is just coming out of the patio. Because the Broncos were off this last week. And I believe that they will not have their edge, like I stated. And not having your edge and then coming in against this battle-tested Bills team with all this playoff experience qualifies as my reason number 4. The Buffalo Bills will defeat the Denver Broncos in the divisional round. Stick with me. Okay, on with the countdown. Now to reason number 3, the Bills will beat the Broncos this weekend, and that is what I am calling the Vegas truth, or follow the money, if you will. Sports gambling is huge now because it's legal in most places, and if there was a lot of money put on teams to win in the old days before the widespread legalization of gambling, there's a ton more now. And with football, it's one of the best to gamble on because it's the ultimate team sport. Now, the wise guys who are setting these lines for these games, the odds makers, are doing so with a lot of care because they stand to make or lose a great deal of money based on the results of games. So they want to know what they're talking about. And interestingly enough, although most of the country was so shocked at it, they installed the Bills as a 1.5-point favorite going into Jacksonville. And lo and behold, it was pretty accurate. Now this week, Buffalo was installed as a 1.5-point favorite going into Denver, right as the final gun sounded at the end of the Bills' defeat of the Jaguars. So we won't spend a lot of time on this, but just to say, the wise guys know what they're doing, and they know what they're talking about, and this line has been set at its spot, probably for a lot of the same reasons I'm thinking of and giving you today, and probably some great ones I haven't even thought of. But let's continue the countdown. All right, we're getting on down there. Now we have reason number 2. The Bills will defeat the Broncos in the divisional round of the playoffs this weekend. And that is the Ralph Rant, CEI, the mathematical hammer. Let me explain. Like last week, I wanted to compare the Broncos and Bills' final 6 contests in the regular season, such as I did with the Jaguars and Bills in last week's video. But when I took a look at the 2 teams using some of the metrics I used last time, I found, well, they're both 5-1, and their opposing strength of schedule, cumulative over those last 6 games, looking at the end of season results, was pretty similar also. But the eyeball test just didn't do it for me with the Broncos. To wit, I'm looking at them winning in overtime to the Commanders, being quarterbacked by Marcus Mariota, 27-26. Then they beat the Raiders just by a touchdown. The Raiders are getting the first pick in the draft. They beat the Packers 34-26, also bringing in a good record, did the Packers, which added to that strength of schedule that the Broncos saw. But the Packers turned into what they ended up being against Chicago when on that game with the Broncos, they lost Micah Parsons. Then the Broncos lost at home to the same Jaguars the Bills just beat. And then the Broncos beat the Chiefs on Christmas night, 20-13. I wasn't that impressed with that win. The Chiefs had just lost Patrick Mahomes. Squad was kind of downhearted, obviously. They were out of the playoffs. And then with the Broncos needing to win again and Week 18 versus the Chargers, who were resting most of their starters, they only won 19-3 and only got a defensive touchdown and 4 field goals. So the wins, losses, the situation with the strength of schedule, there had to be a further difference. So I decided to invent a new NFL stat, which I did. And I've called it the Ralph Rank. Its official name is the Complementary Efficiency Index. And what it essentially is a tribute to what Sean McDermott talks about often with teams playing complementary football. Offense is taking advantage of defense, putting them in a good position with a turnover. So how is the formula actually developed, and what does the index mean? Well, what it looks at is yards for over yards against is a ratio, and points for over points against is a ratio. And then it uses weighting factors such as home or away, such as turnovers, gotten or lost during the game, and other minor items that we add in to try to give a little bit of weight to the final indexes. And it's set up such that if a team absolutely tied, theoretically, it would have an index of 1.00. But based on that, I applied the formula to the two teams using stats from Pro Football Reference on the last 6 games, and this is what I found for the Broncos. Their final CEI, or Ralph Rank, versus the Commanders was 1.02. At the Raiders was 1.62. With the Packers, it was 1.27. 0.73 with the Broncos losing to the Jaguars. The Chiefs was 1.66, and their final game versus the Chargers, the Broncos got a 2.15 CEI. And you could tell from the losses, it's a lower CEI. And what CEI or the Ralph Rank is actually measuring also, in the case of the Broncos, would be, okay, this is a good defense that's presented the team with lots of opportunities, but those opportunities really aren't being taken advantage of. Thus, the lower composite average for the Broncos of 1.41. Their Ralph Rank is 1.41. Now, the Bills, on the other hand, actually managed rankings against the Steelers of 3.21. Of course, offense and defense played great in both regards in that game. Then versus the Bengals, which was a closer game, the Bills only got a 1.14 CEI, 1.20 at the Patriots, 1.43 at the Browns, 1.38 at home versus the Eagles. And yes, they lost that game, but the yardage gained, and we talked about it in the Eagles postgame show, that the Bills outgained them heavily in the second half and really limited the Eagles. And, of course, we saw that manifest again with the Eagles this weekend against the 49ers. And then versus the Jets, with the Bills playing backups essentially, they had a 3.92 CEI. And that gave the Bills a composite average of 2.05. And you could say, well, the Bills played the Jets in there. Well, the Bills also beat the Jaguars just this week. Now, that doesn't count in the CEI, but it's a balancing factor, not in the number, but you have to take a look at the fact that the Broncos did lose to the Jaguars, and that gave them a low number. And furthermore, with the Bills' win against the Jets, that was with second-teamers, whereas the Broncos, with their starters, only could manage 19-3 against the Chargers, who were resting people. And, of course, the Broncos needed to win that game. So the long and short of it is this new Ralph Rank, or CEI, demonstrates that the Bills were actually superior by quite a bit over the last 6 games, with a 2.05 index as compared to the index of the Broncos, which was 1.41. And now we're going to finish up with the number one reason the Bills will beat the Denver Broncos. Okay, the first 4 reasons I've given you that the Bills will win this weekend against the Broncos have been logical. But this last one is biological. And of course, if you've watched the channel at all, you know what's coming. Because the number one reason the Buffalo Bills will defeat the Denver Broncos in the divisional playoff round is that the Bills have Josh Allen and the Broncos do not. Of course, the Broncos could have had Josh Allen with the 5th pick in that draft, but they were involved in a trade that involved Tampa Bay and then the Bills, and the Broncos ended up taking Bradley Chubb with the 5th pick in the draft, leaving Josh Allen for the Bills with the 7th pick. And Josh Allen has turned out to be one of the greatest players the NFL has ever seen. Certainly the only thing missing from his resume are Super Bowls. But other than that, Josh Allen is statistically the greatest playoff quarterback in NFL history. He has the highest passer rating, lowest interception percentage, and averages over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns per game in the postseason. And he's demonstrated that he is even more of a terror when the team is down. And if you try to injure him, he'll rip your heart out. A lot of people think the Bills wouldn't be anywhere. They're nothing without their quarterback, Josh Allen. Well, you can say that about most teams not having their starting quarterbacks. But Josh Allen is definitely different. Josh provides the team with leadership and a spirit and an ability to make plays and a presence that's just unlike anything else we've ever seen. And that's very well why many of these other reasons I gave you earlier in the show are accurate. Because it all boils down to the Bills having Josh Allen. But the Bills also have a defense that looks like it can win the Super Bowl. The Bills just knocked off the Jaguars in the wild card round, who were going to the Super Bowl on the AFC side, in a lot of people's opinions, including that of CBS Sports. Jacksonville's defense was great. The Broncos' defense is great. So we'll see what happens, because, of course, it's only a 60-minute game. But I believe that the Bills will beat the Denver Broncos. And I'm giving you my guarantee here several days before the game. So with that, thank you very, very much for watching. Thanks to all the regulars who are always here and always watching the videos. If you're new to the channel, again, please go ahead and subscribe. If you care, share, and like the video, of course. And, of course, your comments, which I love to hear. Whether you're a Bills fan or a Broncos fan, you're welcome on the channel. So again, thanks very much. I'll be back to you with more before the game. But for now, be good, do good, God bless, and go Bills. I am the Ralph, and this is the Ralph Rant. Out.